What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quos. Today, we'll be breaking down the first 3 episodes of Season 2 of The Boys.
Remember to let us know if you like the content by giving us a like and subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified of future videos.
And if you have some truly diabolical friends that are also fans of The Boys, make sure you share this video with them. They'll love it. Yes, The Boys have made a bloody, profane, and downright diabolical return in Season 2. And, in true Boys fashion, there was no holding back. This season is a little bit different from Season 1, which, as you guys might remember, dropped in full last July. So, for all the fans who are looking forward to watch the whole season in one sleepless, snack-ridden, oh God, why the hell did I do this evening? After this initial viewing, you are going to have to wait for a new episode every Friday. The next episode that's going to air is going to be on September 11th. Never forget.
And this season starts with Billy Joel's pressure playing, symbolic of the pressure everyone is under after the events of last season. Mother's Milk wants to see his family again. Hughie losing his entire life. Butcher now knows his wife is alive, and he'll pretty much do anything to get back to her. Even Homelander is dealing with the loss of his handler Stillwell, even if he is the reason she's gone.
Homelander thinks he's in charge now that Stillwell is gone, but Mr. Edgar sets him straight immediately by letting know where he stands in the food chain. Realizing that Edgar is right and there's nothing he can do about it at the moment, Homelander concedes. Homelander also has to deal with the addition of Stormfront, who threatens his leadership of the Seven. Who is Stormfront, you ask?
Welp, just like real current-day America, the Seven has come down with a case of the Nazis. The problem, no one at Vought seems to have realized it just yet. Stormfront, who is unfortunately named after the first major neo-Nazi propaganda site, and a hate-filled message board on the internet, spends these initial episodes acting almost like she's a foil to Vought and the Seven. Her mastery of social media, her ability to befriend the naive Starlight, and her willingness to further break free from the Vought script, similar to how Starlight did in the last season, really makes her a true threat, especially when in the final minutes of the 3rd episode, Stormfront finally reveals to the audience just how twisted and racist she actually is.
I have to say, I love the way Stormfront made her entrance. Her nonchalant confidence, her bug-in-the-machine attitude is refreshing until the aforementioned final minutes of episode 3.
The Deep is also dealing with the pressure from his sabbatical from the Seven. He has fallen from grace, and without the aid of the Vought PR team to help him out, the bartender was telling him to leave or he's going to call TMZ, he really appears to have hit rock bottom.
Eagle the Archer, a Hawkeye knockoff, seems to help that theory by trying to help him up. The Deep's attempts at redemption all have failed. Could it be that he ends up helping the boys because there's no way back for him? Leave a comment below and let us know what you think.
Does what is happening with the Deep foreshadow what is going to happen to Homelander if he falls from grace? He is trying to assert himself as leader not only of the Seven, but the leader of Vought. And like Dave said earlier, Mr. Edgar is the boss, and they clashed early.
And if you want an awesome, charismatic antagonist, you get Giancarlo Esposito. While Madeline Stillwell definitely showed her fear of Homelander on more than one occasion, Mr. Edgar does not give him an inch. He calls our knockoff Superman out on his misguided attempt to help Vought by putting Compound V out in the world, and he manages to turn Homelander's threat of leaving the Seven right back in his face.
Perhaps Homelander has a weakness, and Edgar knows it. Could it be that his weakness is similar to Mother's Milk weakness in the comics? His weakness in the comics is that if he doesn't drink a lot of milk, he loses his body mass at an alarming rate. And if this is Homelander's weakness, it could be problematic if he's not getting enough milk. Let us know what you think in the comment section below.
There's tension with leadership in the boys as well. Definitely between Hughie and Butcher. Hughie thinks Butcher deserted them, and he thinks that he can do things differently, and Butcher is Well, he's being Butcher. He's really focused on the goal, and he does not care what it takes to get there.
A good example of that is when the helicopter is hit while the boys are on the boat. Hughie wants to save the men that went down in it. Butcher wants to leave them because they're already dead. They represent an obstacle to Butcher.
Obviously, Hughie is a little softer than the boys, but he isn't trained for this. The other boys have done this before, where Hughie sees a chance to save people. Butcher sees those as obstacles, and he just wants to move across them as fast as possible.
And we also see in this episode when Butcher is talking to Mallory, she's asking about an old soup named Liberty. And there's no mention of her in the comics, but in the show, we see her in an old Budweiser ad. And I think it's safe to assume that soups definitely live longer lives than humans and probably look better considering how many of them possess, regenerative abilities. If Mallory suspects she's behind some of the chaos reigning in season 2, it's safe to say she'll play a huge role in the coming episodes.
All right, so let's talk about some theories and kind of gauge whether we were correct or not. So, first theory. Starlight is playing along to help the boys, or rather Hughie, but clearly she's still a little angry at them. We were definitely correct with this theory. The next one. Ryan is Homelander's son, and he wants to train him. Once again, as we see, Homelander is constantly intervening with Ryan, and he's trying to get him to go outside, teach him to use his powers, throws him off the roof at one point. So therefore, once again, we were correct with this theory. And finally, Patton Oswalt, we said, was going to play Tech Knight. We were so wrong. Turns out he was actually Gills. But hey, maybe he's going to be playing 2 roles. So this theory is unfortunately incorrect.
A new theory that we're working on while watching these first 3 episodes of The Boys Season 2 is about the Church of the Collective and Stormfront's white nationalist ties. And perhaps these two are kind of on opposite sides of a war that's coming, and we'll see by the end of the season the boys and the Seven semi-joining up to help stop them, a bigger threat. But hey, let us know what you think down in the comments. And a couple other items of note from these first 3 episodes. We see A-Train having multiple heart problems throughout these episodes. And I honestly think the Compound V is going to kill him. And if that's the case, a lot of soups are going to be pretty worried about what negative effects the Compound V could have in their system. But, it's another problem for Vought. But hey, if Stan is anything, he is a master PR man. So having the Seven, it's like having the Seven working the shelter after destroying that building, and Stan's speech turning it into needing the soups was spin at its best.
This season also introduces characters whose power comes from really more their fans and supporters rather than their position or superpowers. For instance, we've got Congresswoman Victoria Newman, who's played by Claudia Dumet, an AOC stand-in who opposes superheroes interfering with government matters, and she wants to hold congressional hearings about Vought. Then, of course, as we've mentioned, we've got our newest member of the Seven, Stormfront, who's played by Aya Cash. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, she's an internet-savvy superhero from Portland who, like we said, we theorized is probably a Nazi.
And Homelander's kid, Ryan. We see that Homelander has no idea how to raise a kid since, he was raised in a lab. And we do get to a point where Ryan is shoving him away to get him off Becca because he's hurting her and telling him he hates him and to go away. We also found out that it was Homelander that destroyed Kamiko and Kenji's village. So a lot of problems are starting to get lined up for Homelander. And at some point this season, or maybe down the road, he's going to feel like a cornered animal. And if that's the case, I would watch out.
And just to wrap up about the season so far, I don't think it'd be a boys episode without having Hughie having someone else's blood all over him. Like when Raynor's head exploded, that was pretty disgusting. But Hughie continues to lie to Starlight, and she knows it. She showed in the first season she can tell when he's lying. She gives him another chance, and he blows it. He thinks he's protecting her, but he's not. Overall, this season, like Keith and Doug have said, Like every character is stressed, especially Hughie. He has not been in this kind of situation before, like guys have. Homelander thinks he's going to take over, but I don't think he will. I think Edgar's got something up his sleeve. And, like I said before, with my other theory that I asked you guys about, I think if several members of the teams are going to flip to the other side, or at least form some sort of rebellion in their own way. It might not happen this season, might not happen next season. There are going to be 5 seasons of this show. Overall, so far, these 3 episodes, I'm going to give them a 9 out of 10. I love them all.
So one thing that many fans have been asking about so far with this season is why the different release schedule. Well, we looked into it, and this is actually something that's known as the water cooler effect, which, in my opinion, HBO perfected with Game of Thrones and Disney Plus mastered with The Mandalorian. Really, what better way to generate buzz and excitement over a series than leaving it on a cliffhanger just for fans to discuss it the next day with friends or coworkers who are all anticipating the next one? Which brings us to these ruthless first 3 episodes. Like we said before, in true The Boys fashion, there was no holding back. The writer of the source comics actually said in an interview that The Boys would out-Preacher the show Preacher, which was an over-the-top series based on the DC comic of the same name, which Seth Rogen, one of the executive producers for both series, says ultimately paved the way for an adaptation of such a controversial comic book series. As with the previous season, The Boys leans hard into their TVMA rating by giving us more of what a grisly reality of living with superpowered people might actually look like. While we've got Wee Hughie and friends, they're still on their ultimate mission to bring down Vought and ultimately the Seven. Season 2 really seems to be expanding into much larger territory other than the whole corporate greed and corruption angle that we got last season. So we get a taste of religious cults via the Church of the Collective, which, come on, is obviously a Scientology knockoff. And they are attempting to make the Deep the latest member of their family. We get a further dive into the entertainment industry as Vought attempts to make their world's version of the Avengers, or, God forbid, Justice League.
Release the Snyder Cut.
Yeah. Dawn of the Seven probably would be directed by their world's version of Zack Snyder, especially considering the guy who's pitching the movie actually asks them to imagine hearing a Hans Zimmer score in the background. So overall, with this season so far, personally, I'm noticing less of the dark comedy that we saw so much previously. A little bit more action, which I'm totally for, but I'm also finding myself less interested in the antics of the boys, and I'm actually more curious to see what's going to happen next with the Deep and Stormfront. I think a lot of that is probably due to the infighting between Butcher and Hughie, and the rest of the group spending most of these initial 3 episodes runtimes just kind of hiding, and they're afraid to take any action. But so far, I'm enjoying some of these new storylines, and I think Amazon's choice to spread the rest of the episodes out was a good choice. In my opinion, their implementation of the water cooler effect is definitely working. Well, on me at least. And when I'm not discussing this series with my fellow nerds here, I am eagerly looking forward to the next episode. So, my rating, again, this is the first 3 episodes of the season. There's still more to come. I'm going to give this a tentative 8 out of 10.
And so much has happened in the first 3 episodes. And honestly, it flowed so perfectly with what happened last season and with building up to so much for this season with all the characters and groups. New things were introduced like the Church of the Collective, new heroes, Stormfront, Blind Spot, the Daredevil ripoff, RIP, Eagle the Archer, and, Billy Joel songs, being the new motivation for Wee Hughie, who's really starting to struggle with everything. The use of the Billy Joel songs was really well done, since we know the last thing he said to Robin before A-Train ran through her was, "You will not besmirch Billy Joel." and setting up each group in the show with their own problems and each character with their own path and thoughts on the right way to accomplish the goal was put together so well by the writers. And it really is such a convoluted story, and it's just being meshed together so nicely. And every actor nailing their part, with Carl Urban and Anthony Starr really standing out to me. And I just hope we get a lot more of Giancarlo Esposito as Stan Edgar, since we only saw him briefly in these first 3 episodes. Overall, I always think starting off a new season is rough. You got to introduce a bunch of things. Not a lot of things are resolved. But I think they did a great job of getting us anticipating the rest of this season. And that's why I'm going to give it an 8.4 out of 10. I think they did a great job. But hey, that is what we thought of the first 3 episodes of The Boys. What do you all think? Let's get a discussion going down in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.